Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to go through how I make my two main UV LED light sources that I use when running GBC modules at night. So the main reason we need UV is to charge the glow-in-the-dark balls and also to provide a bit of highlighting. So the first one I'm going to show you tonight will be this one. So this is half Lego LED and half UV LED, and you can see this one now. These are my rainbow lift modules, and in these ones I shine the white LED through a trans clear Lego piece to provide the color down the bottom, and I use the UV LED to shine directly in the ball path. The second one I'm going to show tonight is this one. This is a UV LED strip, and this one I use for sort of a saturation charging of the balls. So this one, this one I make in a couple of different lengths, and usually I use it in things like my the UV Brickworld ball pump adapter, which you can see now. This is actually a video of an early prototype, but we did use some thinner versions of these in the night loop at Brickworld Chicago this year, and we also used some longer versions on some brick-built adapters on the new modules. So I'm going to need a few things to get started. I'm going to need some electrical tape, some heat shrink tubing. I'm going to need some more heat shrink tubing, some 5mm UV LEDs. The reason we use a 5mm UV LED is because it fits very neatly in a Technic pinhole, like so. So I need one of those. I'm going to use this little adapter, and this will make sense in a second. Some scissors, and I also have a glue gun and a soldering iron sitting to one side. So first things first, I'm going to do my modification that I do when I keep the clear Lego LED. So that involves a little bit of electrical tape. Alright, so now I need a strip around about 10mm, 3/8 of an inch, like so. And I'm going to wrap it around the back of the LED, like so. So this, we can see here, it's covered the back of it. I'll just push this extra tape down here. And now I'm going to need a bit of heat shrink. So once again, it's another strip. This one's a bit closer to 5/16. I'll cut that heat shrink off, and we will slide that over. Actually, a little long. Let's trim a little more off that. And there we go. I'll slide that over. Give it a bit of a grill to shrink it down. Careful not to put too much heat into the original LED. And there we go. So that's the first mod I do to these LEDs. So I just turn it on and we can see what it does, and I'll bring the other one up so we can see for comparison, is it gets rid of all this light bleed around the back, and this is really important. So if I put this into the colors here, put these into the colors here, we can see that in this one no light's bleeding backwards, so I only get the blue coming out the front, whereas in the yellow one we can see all the whites bleeding out. So that's why I do the tape, and this is non-destructive. You could actually do this to any Lego LED. If you wanted to get them back to original, you would just be a case of cutting off the heat shrink and taking off the tape. Alright, so now on to the second one. We'll turn that off, and this one is most certainly destructive. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut that off, like so. We will open these, split these wires apart a little, so strip the ends. Excellent. Give it a bit of a twist, and then I'm going to tin these. So we'll just sit that there, put that under there. Alright, so tinning is the process where you basically take a wire or a contact and you coat it with solder. The reason I do this, because in the next step I'm going to solder it to the UV LED, and it means I can do it a lot quicker because this wire is already full of solder. Alright, we have got a little bit too much here, so we'll just trim that down a little bit. Now, this is what this little adapter's for. Don't necessarily have to use Lego. If you've got a nice little vice pair of soldering clamps, but in this case I don't, so I'm going to use this to make it a bit easier for me. So actually, first things first, I actually need to power this on again and just double check the polarity. No, other way. And there we go. So that's the polarity I need when I'm soldering them on. Grab my soldering iron again. One. And two. Alright, so that is now soldered on. Yes, good joints. I'll just double check I've still got it on correctly. Now get rid of the extra fly leads off the LED. 1 and 2. We need to prepare our heat shrink. About half that length. Excellent. Now, what I tend to like to do when I'm doing these kind of joints to help make them a bit more robust is just put a little bit of hot melt glue like that. So the hot melt I used, or just standard hot melt glue, is non-conductive, so it's safe to put in. And it just gives it a little bit of extra strength because you're kind of gluing the wires to the LED, not just relying on the solder. And sort of, when leads coming out of LEDs are sort of, this is designed to be soldered to like a through-hole mount, so when you solder it like this, it doesn't have a lot of strength unless you do something like this. Get that into position, give that a quick zap with the flame, give that a squeeze, and try not to get too burnt by the hot melt glue. Alright, and there we go. So let's just turn that on again. So that was the conversion I do to Lego LEDs. So one end I usually just tape because I want to keep the clear so I can shine it through a trans color. And the other end I actually take the LED off and put a UV LED in. So let's get on to the next one I make up, which is using the UV LED strip. Alright, so when making up the UV LED strips, I usually buy usually comes in a long roll like this, and typically it'll already have one of these DC pigtails soldered to it already. However, these strips can all be cut, and they will typically have little sections like this where you can see some potential solder points, and they'll have a little line. And it's a little hard to tell, but there's actually little scissors drawn on those lines. And what that means is I can actually cut this at any length I want. In this case, I'm just going to make a short one. I'm just going to make a little 3 LED long strip. But I typically I'll make that length, and I'll also make one around somewhere around there. I think around 10 inches long. And I'll use them interchangeably. Now, these obviously can't plug straight into the Lego system or into the traditional train volt power supplies. They do need a DC 12 volt power supply in order to run them. So let's get started. First things first, I'll cut that off the strip and then put this to one side. Next, now these are actually this particular one is a waterproof one, which means it's got a little difficult. It's got a little clear coating that I need to get rid of. So I'll get a razor and get rid of that. Okay, just give these terminals a bit of a scrape just to make sure we've definitely got all that silicone protective layer off. There's a couple of different ways you could do this. I just tend to find something that has a nice sharp blade in it. That should be enough. All right, let's tin that up. So this goes off, so put a bit of solder into these joints. There we go, excellent. And there. Excellent. All right, so now with the DC leads I have, won't necessarily always be the case, but these ones are already tinned and marked in red and black, which makes it really convenient. So if I have a look at my little LED strip, it also has a little plus and minus, which makes the job very easy for me. And 1, 2. Now with all these kind of things, it's always good to just do a quick check that everything's soldered correctly before you start covering it in heat shrink and glue. So I'll give that a plug in. That's working excellently. All right, so let's seal it up. Okay, so first things first, I'm just going to peel this back a little, like so. Get a bit of heat shrink ready and just going to nip that one neatly in half and slide that down to there. All right, and now we are ready for some glue. So once again, I'm using the hot melt glue on the terminals, as I find it just gives the whole thing a little bit more strength. Makes it a lot more like this connector on here, the molder connector on the end, except a homemade one at that. All right, hot melt there, excellent. Slide this on. Make sure that LED is exposed, make sure that's there. All right, quick zap with the flame. Some will probably say this is a terrible way to heat shrink, but it works and used in moderation won't damage anything. All right, we'll just give it one last plug in to make sure it's all working. And there we go. So that is the UV LED strip powered from a, there we go, 12 volt DC plug pack. So I hope you enjoyed that video. There's not, both of these are quite easy to make up if you have a little bit of soldering skill. If you don't fret. There are quite a few vendors out there that will sell various UV adapters so you don't have to have any soldering skills. So that is my Lego LED modification and my 12 volt DC UV LED strip that I use when running GBC at night. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to making more.